This wasn't even about him so much. The reason the still is perfect, it's because of the kid. The kid's going, what the fuck is wrong with you? And how do you have authority over me? I mean, I get it. I'm just a helpless, incapable 1-year-old or 2-year-old, whatever. But still, this is what has control over me. This is what has authority. This madness. And also, how the fuck are you not my grandfather? How the fuck are you my father? Aren't you a little old? Shouldn't you be my grandpa? But for the most part, it's you're a little, and I just nailed the still. I just nailed the stills when I pause these videos, and I just kind of want to brag about it. But yeah, you shouldn't have authority over anyone. You should probably be in a nut house. And your poor kid, it should be your grandkid, but you just can't stop yourself, Mr. I write books about sex and probably not using a condom as often as I should, because you should be Gramps. You shouldn't be its daddy. But yeah, nice still.
There's just these basic cadences of life that I think are really powerful and really, really valuable when you have kids in your life. And the fact that so many people, especially in America's leadership class, just don't have that in their lives, I worry that it makes people more sociopathic and ultimately our whole country a little bit less mentally stable. And of course, you talk about going on Twitter. Final point I'll make.
It's pronounced twatter, JD.
Because you go on Twitter and almost
twatter. You keep mispronouncing it. Everyone keeps mispronouncing it.
Always Twitter. Final point I'll make is you go on Twitter and almost always the people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids at home.
The thing about Vance, the crows are apropos. The thing about Vance, JD Vance, yet another name now that intelligent people have to have, living rent-free in their brains for no goddamn good reason other than MAGA just is that fucking cement-headed. So because MAGA is cement-headed and Trump is likewise feeding, because of his own kind of pathological cement-headedness, he's feeding off of their cement-headedness. So he picks this guy, JD Vance. Now, I'm a David Frum listener, so I've known about JD Vance ever since David Frum has been bashing Vance. And these specific things are not denied that Frum says about Vance. Every word of what Frum says about Vance is true. But kind of the reason I want to just devote at least a minute to Vance, it's more than he deserves. The reason I want to just devote a minute to Vance is because he uses the word childless a lot. He wants to tax the childless at higher rates. This is the most fervent of natalism. It's that politicized natalism. It's not so much that I want to say, MAGA needs to be defeated democratically. It just comes down to these handful of issues. Matters of faith and this fervent pro-natalism. He wants to tax the childless at higher rates and just think that he has the upper hand, morally on the childless. See, what he believes is the exact inversion of the truth. But think about these people. Child-free is probably not a word that they've ever heard. It's probably never entered the vocab toolkit. The word's been used, but these people, the fact that the word's been used a lot, these people don't venture that far. These people keep in their lane, so it's always the childless, associating pathologies and miseries with it. Think about it. Why so limited? Are they insincere? I don't believe so. I believe that they believe childlessness ipso facto is a pathology and invites miseries and banes instead of freedom. So they believe the exact inversion of what is in fact true. There's some childless people who want to have children and can't. Either it's some kind of a officially diagnosed thing or, the bitch just can't conceive. Maybe the man is older or something like that. This is like my stupid colleague I've ranted about. I think in either love was an inside job or natalism as collective FOMO, these are all people who are heavily gripped by that collective FOMO. The Vance enthusiasts, including Trump, who's very cement-headed, and see, that's where the pathologies lie. They can't see it. They truly think that to be childless is to be miserable and in denial about it. That's what they believe. But see, it all comes down to codependence. That's why they're so much more codependent. They're just signaling codependence and not realizing it because they can't fathom it in those terms. They can't fathom non-codependence on an emotional level, interpersonally. They can't fathom interpersonal independence. It ties back to the species. The whole Vance problem, the fervent, politicized natalism problem comes down to the fact that they just can't fathom emotional freedom from others and groups. They need it. They need it like the rest of us need air. They can't even fathom the idea that, no, that's the aloofness and the ability to accurately see reality when you're not worried all the time. If you're a decent parent, you're going to worry significantly. It's going to impede on your quality of thought, as worry does. So there's like one reason out of like dozens more I could give you as to why it actually affords strengths, the precise opposite of what they would attribute to it. Childlessness, being child-free, affords strengths in many a way. They can't begin to see it because they can't begin to so much as conceive of emotional independence from others and groups. They're woven to the species. They'd be embarrassed to talk the way they talk in terms of people who don't start families had they been able to see these ulterior paths that they're just completely blocked off from. Because to be emotionally independent they've only ever known codependence. What else explains it? What else explains it? Man, look at it go. And none of this is to say that people ought not have their own lifestyle preferences, right? You're more driven by emotional ties. You can't do the solo stuff. I'm not gonna say that you're immediately to be disrespected or even ridiculed, but you ought to know what that is, right? And if you do know what that is, you won't be blind to these alternative paths that you've neglected, like a more aloof life, generally more stolid, like more stoical. No one's going to be perfectly stoical. But there's these numbers that show that, yeah, parents do worry more, and I would say rightly so. If they understand the stakes. But maybe a lot of you people you just don't understand the stakes. So maybe you don't worry more. Maybe you need something like a Amber Alert to shake you out of your false comfort zone. As much as I hate to say it, I don't wish upon any parent to endure an Amber Alert. Most of them end badly, but it seems that that's the only way these people would understand the stakes, is if they undergo it and then it ends up fine. The kid is found. Maybe then they would be able to hear me in the appropriate tone that they ought to. And then they will rightly worry more from there on out. Right? Imagine your child was missing for a month and then the Amber Alert is one of those few times it ends up well. The kidnapper off themselves or whatever, and now the child is back. The kidnapper chose not to take the child's life, though the kidnapper could have. And now you're that parent. And now you have to give your child some amount of freedom. It's the right thing to do. It's only fair to the child. But the consequence of that is that you're going to spend a lot of time worrying. Now, you may be a right bastard and deny your child all freedom because that might happen again. But see, that's the kind of pickle you would have created for yourselves. And all these people who think they're immune from those kinds of things, no. Maybe you actually need to have it happen to you just as a thought experiment. Your child is the child for which there's an Amber Alert. Don't run that thought experiment and come back and tell me, oh, yeah, the stakes are low. No, the stakes are higher for you people. And when the stakes are higher, people panic. And when people panic, they're not at their best cognitively. And you people are all closed off to all these things. And someone ought to call you on it. Apparently not a single human being in the American media, alt media, establishment media, apparently not a single human being knows to tell this story except for me. So, it's not that I want to, deal with boneheaded replies and get more views. I don't want that. I just want somebody to tell this story. Okay? If you're a sober-minded parent, you're going to spend a lot more time worrying. Or just denying your child all childhood freedom so that you don't have to worry, but then being a right bastard for that. So you've put yourself in a pickle. You've got a lot of hard choices to make because childhood freedom, regardless of what you want to say about it, is a important and very under-discussed issue. And I don't have to rack my mind around that in my personal life the way I would had I begotten a new casualty. a new casualty of nature had I chosen to do that. I'm now closed off to all those dilemmas. Those are a bunch of dilemmas. How much freedom do you give to your child? You know, freedom is God-given. So what? God says freedom truly begins at 18? No. See, these are all the other kind of political mistakes you make when you think freedoms are not government-given but God-given. Is you forget that freedom is classified into different types of persons. Did God carve any of that out? Did God carve out 18 years old is when adulthood begins and when you get a bunch more freedoms as a result? Did God carve that out? I must have missed that fucking part of the Bible. So yeah, you guys just can't be as aloof as I am. And you have to recognize that is your handicap. That is my strength and your handicap. And if anyone should be taxed much more, it's the rich. It's not necessarily the natalists, and it's not necessarily the antis. It's the rich. So I'm not even saying I want to tax you guys, even though you assholes are saying you want to tax me higher. Luckily, Canadian cons haven't outright said that yet, but I think they're percolating on it. I think it's percolating. Pardon the echo hallway segment. Don't ask why I'm stuck here, but I got more stuff from the outside, but I just got to do a caveat before I resume from that outside rant. There was kind of shots fired here with the Vance stuff. It's kind of shots fired, shots heard. And I'm the one who heard the shots being fired. So I think it's fair to say, if anyone who looks at the archives of this channel, I, for the longest time, for so many years, kept natalism versus anti-natalism as a strictly apolitical thing. For the longest time. And along came Vance, but this was percolating far before Vance. And now it's just, fully overflowing in the States and percolating in Canada, and I'm expecting it to overflow in Canada as well. So locally, I'm not facing this threat. I'm talking as if I'm facing this threat in my personal life as a political threat, that I'm going to be in some way taken advantage of as a childless person by people who think it'd be a good idea for me to have children. I'm not facing that threat. I'm just seeing a lot of my, fellow child-free cohorts in the US facing this kind of threat. So, this is kind of shots fired, shots heard. And for the longest time, I just want to point out, I wanted to keep this purely apolitical. I didn't want to politicize anything in procreative ethics. One side is being very instigative here in the US. And it's the firebrand, hardcore pro-natalists. So I view all of this, to the extent that I am taking it in political directions, I'm viewing all of it as having been done purely for defensive reasons. And if you can't see that, you're not paying attention. You're not seeing who's being the instigative force. Certainly in America, and if I'm reading the slogans right, I expect it to take shape in Canada too. It'll probably just take a lot longer for our local cons here to grow in numbers and feel like this is something they're entitled to do because they want to, whatever. It's not just, we can't just grow the pie through immigration, we also got to grow the pie through procreation. Something like that. But perhaps more importantly, they're retards who don't get it. Like, these creatures are awesome. It's like, oh, cat lady. But no, you guys are stupid. Like, these creatures are awesome. If there were ever awesome creatures, they're the wrong select kind. They're the fast life history kind. So they're also empathetic for that way, because many a times it just, sometimes it gets caught on video. Sometimes they do it to each other. Oh, God. As much as I empathize, just the noises they make. The noises they make when they're... But, they're the most, praiseworthy of the creatures. Aesthetically, fine, it's all about the cuteness. But, these natalist retards, it's like, cat lady, boo, we hate cats. You guys are stupid for, maybe even more so, just because you don't get it, that cats are awesome. And it's one of the few decent dames is, the dame who takes care of cats. That's one of the few decent dames. But you guys just can't get any of the points right. Because you guys think those dames are the lamest. But it's no, it's the inversion of reality again. But yeah, I'm supposed to scroll through this because there's just, come on. You want to bring children into a world where this many, when they're the fast life history species, they're too cute to be fast life history. They're cute to be, too cute to be attritioned in the name of the species survival. It's many a horrible end, even captured on video, I have to say, many a horrible end. But so deserved to have like 100% of them live the blissful life, but it just doesn't happen. But it's kind of, it's symbolically appropriate that the stupid Vances, it's like, no, those are bad creatures, dame who takes care of them, bad dames. Like, you guys are stupid. Anyway, now back to me. I did more stuff outside, so I'm just going to go back to that more. Back to me essentially arguing anti-natal stuff more effectively than anyone else I've seen. Isn't that what I'm doing in this video? I go on. This is a brief inside interjection. I want to mention the cat part. But I go on to argue anti-natal stuff more effectively and just, anti-natalism more effectively than anyone I've seen, right? Pushing these boundaries, these emotional boundaries, because, if you don't push it, they're not going to push it. Armchair or not, they're not going to push it. It has to happen to them. But like, why hate this? Fluffy and cute, and horrible things happen to them. God. So to round out, the stakes are higher when you beget. I think that's an undeniable fact. The stakes are higher when you beget in a very important and wide category of life. Maybe a anti-natalist or child-free person can increase liability in some other non-procreative domain of life for themselves. Like maybe they're a gambler. So to be a non-begetter, to be outspoken about it, to believe that it is to some extent wrong, doesn't mean that you're going to be sober-minded in all other areas of life. You may be less sober-minded when it comes to something like gambling. Who knows? Maybe you're more into like flings or something. That's why you don't want to have a kid. Maybe you're more into flings. Maybe you're just childless because, as I said, like my boneheaded colleague, spent over a decade trying to conceive. Listen to one of those two. Love was an inside job, or natalism as collective FOMO. Maybe they have a collective FOMO around sexuality and, the fling aspect beats out the species aspect. It's possible, How's this for one? Matters of lust predominate for some people and matters of family for others, right? These are very often, these things often come down to just differences in dispositions, but people should be able to think beyond that. One fact that's just inexorably true is the stakes become higher when you beget. Another very important fact, which they want to use free will to wiggle out of, but another very important fact is you never have ultimate control of the matter. You never have ultimate control over the matter. So 1 + 1, the stakes become higher despite the fact that you don't have ultimate control. And that's why you have to lie to your child. Often when the child seeks reassurance, is it going to be okay? You don't know whether or not it's going to be okay. But the right thing to do is to lie, especially when the child is, frantic. You have to often lie to your child for its own welfare. That's the dilemma I don't subject myself to. I don't want to lie to anyone. The fact that I got to deal with people and, be more polite to them than I would, maybe I ought to just, choose poverty so I don't ever have to do anything like that. And notably the colleagues, maybe I ought to just be as brave as the Bohemians were, who it was about that intellectual life, whether in artistic, philosophical, literary. The Bohemians were often childless. But see, the Vances are the precise opposite of the Bohemians. They would view that. Even they would apply a word like degeneracy and misuse it and apply it even to the Bohemians who sought the highest intellectual good. Did they not? For the Bohemians, it was neither family nor flings, hookups, as the modern parlance, the vulgar modern parlance would put it. No, it was devoting their lives to kind of solitary stuff that you need a lot of solitary time for to refine and perfect and produce, works of art. The Bohemians, this is just, fuck your economic charts telling me I ought to be excited because, the employment numbers are perfect. I don't think those are perfect numbers. I think a lot of people are doing stuff they shouldn't have to be doing just to get by. I think that's stupid, and I think the economic data always leaves it out. There's a lot of people doing stupid stuff that they're, above, but they see how, advancing and promotions would just be onerous in a completely different way and then eat up a lot of their post-occupational time. If you're doing, promotion right, you're going to spend a lot more, after hours thinking about work because the stakes are going to be higher. As with begetting. So like, why would I want promotions? It's just going to eat up more time, more of my brain after work, thinking about, what's going to happen next when I leave, because that's the consequences are going to be there for me waiting. It's like, why would I want that kind of lifestyle where I have to think about work even when I clock out? But if you don't, then you're working with a bunch of knuckleheads who can't advance, and you're like, why am I here? This is not the best optimal use of my time. But if I don't choose that, I end up in poverty after maybe, 5 years or 7 years, if I've done my math right. So I'm too wussy to just stop doing the occupational thing. But I can't do the bohemian thing if I'm doing the work thing. So anyway, this is just to say, the stakes are higher when you beget. The stakes are also higher when you get a mortgage, a second one. But yeah, the stakes are higher when you beget. Decent person accepts that. Decent person also admits that they don't have ultimate control. If you're decent and informed, you will just recognize you can't use free will to wiggle out of the fact that you don't have ultimate control. And so you gotta lie to your kid. Will it be okay? Will it be okay? You have no fucking idea. You're sure your child it's gonna be okay. So that's a handicap for you, not for me. But despite that, my anti-natalism is of a pacifistic nature. I don't want to tax you guys more. I wouldn't use the apparatus of the state to prohibit what you do, because I'm pacifistic on procreative ethics ultimately, and I think there's reason to be that. It starts with... jogger. Nice Sunday morning. It starts with recognizing that there's these other bunch of domains of life where the stakes are high and where people are injured, like emotionally injured, marital context, relationship context, where despite the fact that they were injured because one person behaved recklessly and cheated on them, they cheated on their spouse and there's a lot of heartbreak, like we don't think to use the apparatus of the state to regulate that out of existence, even if it predictably can be shown that, people would be more circumspect in whether or not they cheat on their spouse if they knew that their wife could legally, or just the state was going to take legal action against them because they caused harm through heartbreak, right? Now, it never occurs to anyone to then say that, okay, we ought to prevent harm, let's use the apparatus of the state in this domain of life. No, that's just a domain of life that's closed off from state apparatus interference, if we understand what we're doing as, individualists. But many a natalist thinks the rules change when it comes to this pro-natalist, I'm running across the street, pro-natalist incentivization scheme that they want to push, taxing folks like me more. No. So I would say this to the this is why I'm an odd anti-natalist. I'm a pacifistic anti-natalist. I think procreation is all kinds of wrong. It stops short of being morally impermissible. Just as, cheating on one's spouse, you don't try to prohibit that just because you can show directly it caused harm, or just deception in any other kinds of, trusted interpersonal relationships. What do they call them? You have your confidants. So yeah, as a confidant, you betray the person who trusted you. But it was just an informal understanding between like two BFFs, and the confidant just kind of spilled the beans. That's not legally actionable, even though it leads directly to harm. There's certain domains of life where Americans just don't understand. It's fucking hands off. And one of them ought to be whether or not a person chooses to beget. If I had the majority, if the majority of the people, if I were the philosopher king as anti-natalist, I would not prohibit it. Unless there's like AIDS patients, then maybe I would prohibit it. But, for the rest of it, this is a choice people have to make. Even though it involves creating harm. So I think if anti-natalists want to rise above the kind of inverted J.D. Vance perspective, where if we just have the numbers, we would prohibit it. We would cause forced abortions, just like these assholes want to force women to give birth. Yeah, you need to rise above that bullshit, you need to be a pacifistic anti-natalism. And so if I just left it to the audience now, what percent of anti-natalists do you think are pacifistic? So, maybe these groups deserve each other, because all it takes is the numbers for them to show what they'd be willing to do and all the horrific ways they'd be willing to go. All the horrific avenues they'd be willing to go to get their way, and to either force women to give birth or force the abortions. You got to be a pacifistic anti-natalist. But just as consequential is to point out that, now as a spectator, because I'm not going to fight any wars, including the anti-natal war. I'm not going to fight. No, there's no wars that should be fought. We should not fight any type of war, no matter how righteous, from a kind of spectator standpoint it appears. We ourselves should not fight any wars. We should just be Bohemians, right? But now, suppose, I'm assuming if you're this far into this, you would identify as anti-natal in some important way. Maybe you think it is morally impermissible. I don't. But it's all kinds of wrong. But from a spectator standpoint, right? I condemn anti-pacifistic natalism and anti-natalism equally. That's what I just did here. I just condemned it equally when I said these groups deserve each other, right? You're willing to force the abortion, or you're willing to force the woman to give birth when she doesn't want to. Even if she wanted to get the abortion right away early in the first trimester, still you would say, no, she ought to give that. I'm gonna freaking surveil her and prevent her from crossing state lines. That's how fervent, that's how much of an abortion hawk you are. That's how absolutist you are in your pro-life dogma. Okay, you and the anti-pacifistic anti-natalist who would prohibit it, who would force the abortion, had they had the numbers, and it's just all a matter of numbers. I'm saying to some extent you two groups deserve each other. But from a spectator standpoint, when it comes down to those, or let's say when some anti-natalists only drop the pacifism when they see that the natalists in their society have dropped their pacifism and kind of started supporting a figure like J.D. Vance. So at least those, even in that case, I wouldn't. I would remain a spectator because all wars are stupid. We should just be Bohemians. But to the extent that some anti-natalists are going to drop their pacifism when they see their opponents have, as a spectator, I'm not going to be neutral in the outcome of that fight, right? If there's an outcome to that fight. If a certain group wins, I'm going to be happier than if a certain other group wins. Just as a spectator, I think it's worth pointing that out. But you shouldn't drop the pacifism and then become just a lemming for your cause, willing to die in a war. But as a spectator, yeah, okay, you should. If one side's going to win, it better be the anti-natalist side. But I'm still a spectator. Oh, but this. Yeah, then there was this. Did a community post. I don't mean for this to just be a flash in the pan within this video, graphically, as with eugenics, I just flashed it graphically. I don't really dwell on it because I'm ranting about something else when I'm outside. But this needs its, you know what? I don't need to talk about it. Go read the article. If you got extra time, go read all the research it links to. People are discovering the truth about their biological parents with DNA and learning that incest is far more common than many think. People won't listen, though. They'd sooner lift all taboos on incest. Yeah, because incest doesn't diminish the will to live, right? Taking eugenics seriously and, incest seriously, that may be healthy, but it diminishes the will to live. It's all about the will to live prevailing in the end, right? There's nothing they could do. They'd sooner lift all taboos on incest. They would, or they'll just deny the research, but the research is rock solid. But yeah, there was this graphically in the video, so I just gotta kind of, According was such a great, God, I got so many of these. But yeah, According used it in this video. I mentioned flings, so, lust is a lot like sneezing. I don't say thank you. What do you mean? Don't you say bless you? I do say bless you, but I don't say thank you. When I sneeze, someone says bless you, I don't say thank you. Or at least I endeavor to not say thank you. Sometimes I say thank you. Oh, well, this is just all accidental. I didn't mean to do this. I'm sorry. This is just not fair. Oh, Geppetto. See? It's innocent. It's Geppetto. Geppetto wasn't an asshole because he wanted a kid, right? Geppetto should have just had, some philosophers, who are experts at, procreative ethics, just sit him down and talk to him. But no one was around to just sit him down and talk to him. So, Geppetto's not an asshole, right? It's okay to be morally ignorant sometimes. It's okay to be morally ignorant and extremely codependent and old. And what's the deal, man? Were there no dames around Italy, right? It was originally Italy. What the fuck? Yeah, I'm doing all kinds of last-minute drive-by research on my, did I stay true to the canon for the Pinocchio? I never read the stupid Italian book. I only saw the Disney classic. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong about this. And it's the most trivial aspect of the video, but I'm still like, I'm so responsible. I still want to do some minimal drive-by research. So Geppetto never intended to have a son. He wanted simply to carve a puppet. However, his love made him into Pinocchio's dad, despite the puppet's foul antics throughout the adventures of Pinocchio. But then, you know, there's like fanfic stuff, so you always got to watch out. It's hard to know what's the actual canon. Let me go up. Why doesn't Geppetto have a son? Geppetto has a tragic backstory that's only hinted at in the remake. By the remake, do they mean the recent stupid, you know, CGI-friendly thing? Or do they mean like the remake as in the original Disney classic? You don't know. In the remake, we learned that Geppetto had an unnamed son who died. Though we never learned the backstory, it helps explain that Geppetto is channeling some of his grief for his dead child into his work as a woodcarver by building Pinocchio. I don't know if that works. I think it's better if he was just, I don't know, if he was just infirm in some way. If he was just infirm and that's why he could never even have a... So like the OG kid he had was Pinocchio. That's better than, you know, if he actually coomed into a woman and had an actual kid. I don't like that one. How did Geppetto lose his wife? So it gets weirder. This has to be the fanfic. This has to be the fanfic. Francesca Woodward, the late mother of Pinocchio and wife of Geppetto. Francesca was a kind woman that Geppetto loved very much. She tragically passed away after giving birth to Pinocchio. Though her death breaks Geppetto's heart, he carries on to honor her memory, raising Pinocchio. That's my least favorite. But yeah, it's, you know, there's like so many canons when it comes to this thing. And this is last minute. I gotta freaking upload this thing. I should have uploaded this thing by now. God, to be a conservative in America is to be utterly obsessed with the fact that you live in America. That's to be an American conservative. 2016 onwards, getting worse. But it is just the main thing to exhibit politically is that you're the type of person who's utterly obsessed about the fact that you live in America and your lot likewise lives in America. Now, they don't always look like this, right? This is the kind of, you know, my hatchet job. But often they look so much more reasonable. And they sound, I don't know what this guy sounds like, but I'm sure they sound so much more reasonable. But especially look so much more reasonable and, you know, leaner and cleaner and clean-shaven. And, you know, wearing suits very often, clean cut, very important. Sometimes pen articles about how it's important to dress to impress. But all around cleaner and leaner and telling you, you know, meat's the greatest thing ever. They often look and sound far more reasonable. But setting aside the fact that the man I allude to, Mr. Peterson, is a Canadian, he qualifies for this too. There's these people in America. They call themselves conservatives. They're actually far more often just reactionaries. They're just moved by these current things. They never like look. There's never a rift based on like some disagreement over some constitutional principle. It's always these recent things like, oh, do you believe only 9/10 of the Russia hoax was an actual hoax? Oh, we're gonna disparage you now. You're out of the club now. Yeah, those types of people, everything current. Unlike, you know, people like David Frum. But it doesn't always look this fat and unkept and, you know, epistemically weak, you know, but they are. They don't look it, but they are as epistemically weak as my ancestors built this country. Conservatives in America, you know, they're just reactionaries, but at the party level, we have to call them conservatives because they have control of the conservative party. So we have to call them conservatives, even though they're just like mostly just reactionaries. But like, okay, conservatives, it often looks and sounds and seems wiser than this, but it's every bit as epistemically weak as this. They're just these people. Rufo, I can go down the list. Ben Shapiro. These are people who are just utterly obsessed with the fact that they live in America. Like that's the central political thing. You know, give me the Romneys. Give me the makers versus takers. Give me the maker. Don't give me my ancestors built this country. You know, it looks more slick than this, but the obsession is the same. The obsession is we live in America. Let's shoehorn that into everything, including trade, and allow for protectionism and drive up prices even more, but say we're going to save the economy. Our American community economy. It's just this with a gloss. Americana Americana Mama Bears. Let me move over to the Mama Bears. I did Mama Bear already. Good morning, Patriots. Yeah, Mama Bear, you're up next. But I did Mama Bear, but she's up next. Good morning, Patriots. I guess as a non-patriot, she wouldn't necessarily bid you a good morning. Or maybe just by default if you're a non-patriot. But what if you're a patriot for the wrong country? Would she then bid you a good morning? Or is it specific kind of patriots? Something tells me she means good morning American patriots. But Sarah Smith, you're on Twitter. So there's a lot of non-Americans who might be patriots who you might hate. So you got to be careful with this kind of stuff. But good morning patriots. No one else, not necessarily, right? You kind of want to know who your audience is, right, Sarah Smith? You don't want any disagreeable figures in your audience. No, so it's good morning, patriots. This mama hare is trying to protect her babies from a hawk. This reminds me of how I'm constantly trying to protect my kids from the government. I do not and will never co-parent with the government. Stay away, tyrants. But certainly, Sarah Smith, certainly there would be some policies that would be kind of, governmental interference, like a parent is just trying to, skin their kids alive or something. And then the government meddles with it. Surely you wouldn't be neutral, or you wouldn't call them, those parents, victims of a tyrannical government. Surely you can expand your horizons if the right example comes up. So you're being categorical here where you have no reason to be categorical. Right, Sarah Smith? Can you grasp such things? Surely you see that, parents who abuse their, let's say, infant girls by forcing FGMs on them, surely you can see that, it's not a tyrannical move to say that, well, that ought to be, prevented. It's not a tyrannical move. It's a risky move, but it's not a tyrannical move in the best cases, because you worsen the quality of those children's lives, don't you, by FGMing them, right? Doesn't a freedom-loving couple who just wants to mind their own business and FGM their daughter, doesn't such a couple worsen the quality of their child's life? Isn't that a valid role for some third party? Doesn't necessarily have to be a government, right? But there's these third parties that, don't have to be tyrannical in order to say, you guys are sick fucks and you ought to stop doing that to your children. But I guess you wouldn't think yourself as being even within the range of any of those sick fuck groups now, would you? No, you've got the virtuous agenda, Sarah Smith. And no one should even ask any questions. No, it's your business, Sarah Smith. But it's funny, the analogies to nature, you're more onto something than you'll know, Sarah Smith, with these analogies to other species. All those other species, what they do, it manifests without knowledge. It's amazing to observe. It's as if someone's playing a magic trick. But those animals do what they do, and knowledge has nothing to do with it. Kind of like in your case. Man, look at it go. Look at it go. What do you think? What do you think? You've got a few seconds to think about it. What do you think? Isabella Moody. I don't know these creatures. Somehow these creatures end up on my phone. I guess it's so stupid, I impulsively grab the snapshot. Sometimes I don't have time to give him clever titles. But, I guess I just take so many of these and I plan to do something with them. So you got a few seconds left. What do you think it is that she has discovered with her galaxy-sized brain that the left hates to see? Got a few seconds. You got to make the most of it. You got to guess. I think you guys will be able to guess, right? There's a through line at this point in the video. But I think you'll be able to guess what she, genius level intellect, has figured out and needs all caps to emphasize for her twatter crowd. If she doesn't use the all caps, maybe the twatter crowd just won't get how bad it is. But 3, 2, 1, what does the left hate to see? And who is the left? Oh, no, that's beyond the point. The left hates to see... It's another mama bear. It's another mama bear on Twitter. It's another mama bear who's political about her being a mama bear on Twitter. I mean, it's true. I hate to see this. I hate to see... I was rocking something close to this back when I could, but I didn't use product. But back in my teens, yes. But without product, it somehow stayed up back then when it was, firmer. The firm thing. The firmer, the age is an enemy of firmness. And here's a dame who realized that, her firmness ain't gonna last long. And somehow she's got it spun in her head that this is something that can be politicized. Oh, wait, it can be. Because that's just how dumb the twatter crowd is. The twatter crowd will believe her. Whereas, I'm sitting here going, I wish. Oh, I wish you were right, Isabella. I wish I didn't know who you were. I wish I hadn't taken up the little itty bitty space on my phone for this snapshot. Because I don't know if this will pay off, but I so wish you were right. Well, no, I don't, because, no one. No, the left shouldn't hate to see this. The left shouldn't hate to see this. I'll just have to shelve what I did. I went into a pro and con list in terms of whether it'd be on balance good if the left hated to see this, right? Pros and cons, But, what I meant by I wish is not that I wish they would hate to see this. I just wish there were that many people, whatever they want to call themselves, the left, fine, have the country. I merely meant that I wish that there were that many people who themselves would abstain from procreation. And, just renounce a great many things, but chiefly procreation. Turn away the will. Deny versus assert the will. Deny versus assert. The more wise you are, the more you will deny it. The more foolish you are, the more you'll do this. But I just simply meant that that's what I wish. I don't wish that the left, actually literally hated to see this, whether they want to racialize it or not. I think she's racializing it here. But, just this in general. Even if she meant the left hates to see this in colorblind contexts, which she didn't mean, but even if the twat was, the left hates to see this even in colorblind contexts, it's even then I would say, no, it should just be about the individualistic standpoint. Do you, as an individual, assert or deny the will to live? If others want to be foolish, ultimately it's their right. They seem to have a luxurious enough, roomy living space. So, best of luck. But, if you ever do it again, and if you have a miscarriage, and if you have some colleagues, and if some of your colleagues are night shift workers, don't expect your colleagues, certain those who are night shift workers, don't expect, if you ever have a miscarriage, for some of those night shift workers to sign sympathy cards for your miscarriage, especially if they warned you. Don't expect any of that. But, it's an anti-natal culture. The West has anti-natal culture. Yeah, no, if we had anti-natal culture, when the stupid morons have a miscarriage, we'd all sign congratulations cards at work or Schadenfreude cards. That's not what we do at work. At work, you're expected to show a deep kind of communal solidarity when the stupid, even pushing on their 50s people finally conceive and then have a miscarriage. And then you got to navigate those kinds of spaces, right? If there was a left that hated to see this, I'm on the West Coast. It's kind of lefty, but, no one agrees on what it is. But, we can still say at a level of vibes, it's kind of lefty West Coast. If the left hated to see this, I wouldn't be, just to coexist with my coworkers. I wouldn't have to walk these tightropes, just how abrasive do I want to be today versus amiable, I don't want to be amiable even when they have a miscarriage, but sometimes that's really pushing it, and that's kind of occupational hazard. It's occupational hazard for me to tell the dumb people who had no business conceiving this late in the game, no. There's certain things I cannot do. But anyway, yeah, the gag was only going to work as if I said I wish. But yeah, these people don't so much think as they have these cognitive spasms. That was the whole point of this. I just wanted to kind of point out, it's not so much that they have thoughts and are capable of thinking properly speaking. They just have these cognitive spasms, especially these mama bears. So, best of luck. I hope it's wiser than you. How's that? I hope it's wiser than you. And, if you have the guts to just let it listen to my videos, even just for 1% of its time, yeah, there's a good chance it'll turn out wiser than both of y'all. But you don't have the guts to let anything like that happen now, do you? And yeah, you just think in spasms.